All right, buckle up, buttercups, because we're about to dive headfirst into the wacky world of body language. I'm Simon Kutzer, your friendly neighborhood certified human lie detector. And yes, that's a real thing. And yes, it makes family dinners really interesting. Forget stuffy textbooks. We're decoding the silent screams and secret smiles that happen every single day. Let's get to it. So picture this. Someone's telling you everything's fine, dandy even, but their fists are so clenched they could crack walnuts. Newsflash, folks, those aren't jazz hands of joy. Every little twitch, every mini move is like a secret emotional emoji. Our bodies are basically drama queens, spilling the tea, even when our mouths are trying to play it cool. Now let's get a little sciencey. Enter kinesics, the super smart study of how we move and what it all means. This brainy party was started by the one and only Ray Birdwhistle. Turns out we actually talk with words for a ridiculously short amount of time each day, about 10 to 11 minutes. And our average sentence, a whole 2.5 seconds of pure linguistic genius. Compare that to 250,000 facial expressions that we can apparently make. That's more faces than my toddler pulls in a tantrum. It just goes to show you, the real juicy stuff isn't always what's being said. It's in the silent movie playing out with our body. Birdwhistle nailed it when he said, words talk about the event, but the body language, that's the relationship roller coaster. All right, let's chat about how we got to using our fancy words. This slide tells us that speech, that thing we're doing right now, probably only showed up fashionably late to the party between 2 million and 500,000 years ago. Can you imagine trying to order a takeaway without words? Just a series of increasingly frantic grunts and pointing. Sounds like my last attempt to assemble flat pack furniture. Before we became so verbally gifted, it was all about the body language and those sophisticated throat noises. And get this, even with all our eloquent sentences, that's still a massive part of how we connect. Now, this Albert Meribian fellow, real Sherlock of the nonverbal, did some digging in the 50s and came up with some pretty mind-blowing numbers. Apparently, when we're trying to get a message across, the actual words we use are only about 7% of the impact. 7%. That's like saying the sprinkles are the main part of the cupcake. The rest, a whopping 38%, is all in how we say it. The tone, the little ums and ahs, the dramatic size. And the lion's share, a massive 55%, is pure, unadulterated body language. So you could be saying, I'm thrilled, but if your arms are crossed and you're staring at the ceiling, guess which part of the message people are really going to believe? Our bodies. They're the ultimate truth tellers. And even when our mouths are trying to sell a different stories, our bodies cannot lie. We are constantly broadcasting and receiving a rich tapestry of unspoken signals throughout our body language, often without conscious awareness. Even when it's cricket level silent, our posture is shouting, I'm confident and open for business versus, please don't make eye contact. Our gestures are either smooth operators or like a toddler who's had too much sugar. And our faces, a relaxed Zen garden or a tightly wound spring. Understanding the silent language is like having a secret decoder ring for human interaction. Forget relying on words. That's just like reading only half the text message. Throughout history, being a body language wizard has been pretty crucial. Think cavemen sizing up a potential saber-toothed tiger. Spoiler alert, tense posture and growling usually meant back away slowly. Even today, we instinctively get the don't mess with me vibes. It's a survival skill, folks, and it's way more interesting than your uncle's fishing stories. First impressions, right. We like to think we're all about those soulful eye gazes when we meet someone. But guess what? Turns out our brains are actually doing a full body scan faster than a supermarket checkout. We're clocking posture, that awkward handshake, the questionable fashion choices, no judgment, and those blink and you'll miss them facial expressions. These tiny snippets of behavior get processed faster than your phone updates, and they stick. We form opinions on friendliness, who's the boss, if they're trustworthy, and even if sparks might fly, all based on this non-verbal buffet. Sure, our gut feelings can be as reliable as a weather forecast in April, but it's how our social brains are wired. Blame evolution. It probably saved us from a dodgy handshake with a caveman trying to steal our berries. Let's chew on why all this body language business is actually a big deal. This slide spells it out pretty nicely. See the first point? Words are used for conveying information. Fair enough. If you need to know the capital of Botswana or what time the next train leaves, words are your trusty steed. But then comes the juicy bit. Body language is used for negotiating interpersonal attitudes. That's where the real human-to-human stuff happens. Are you trustworthy? Are you friendly? Are you about to steal my stapler? Your body's broadcasting all that way louder than your polite good morning. And this last one, pure gold. A woman can give a look to kill without opening her mouth. Amen to that. We've all been on the receiving end of that laser silent beam of disapproval. No words needed, you know exactly where you stand. And you've probably messed up. It just goes to show the sheer power packed into a single glare or a subtle shift in posture. So while words give us the facts, our bodies are constantly negotiating the emotional landscape. Understanding the silent language, that's like having the cheat codes to human interaction. Observations frequently suggest a heightened sensitivity in many women regarding the subtle and intricate dynamics of social gatherings. This isn't a universal trait, but patterns often emerge. They may seem to possess an almost superpower-like ability to read the social tea leaves effortlessly, picking up on the subtle cues like a fleeting eye glance, a micro shift in someone's stance, a subtle lip purse, or even standing awkwardly far from whom. These tiny breadcrumbs of nonverbal communication can reveal secret alliances, brewing conflicts, unspoken crushes, and who's suddenly feeling like the odd one out. This reading the room skill is like having social GPS. It helps navigate those tricky human landscapes without crashing and burning. Let's get a little brainy for a second, because this is where things get really interesting. The hardware. It turns out there can be some fascinating differences in how men's and women's brains handle communication. For starters, it's often observed that women, on average, seem to have a real knack for expressing themselves and picking up on the nuances of a conversation. You could almost say their brains are wired for a more multi-layered approach to communication. They're not just processing the words, they're also tuning into the tone, the unspoken emotions, and all those subtle signals we send out. And here is where it gets even more intriguing. Research suggests that women's brains may dedicate a significantly larger number of areas to analyzing other people's behavior compared to men's. Think of it like this. While a guy might be focused on the main plot of the conversation, a woman's brain might be simultaneously tracking all the subplots, the character development, and potential plot twists. Now, of course, this is a generalization. Not every woman is a communication whiz, and not every man is clueless about nonverbal cues. But understanding these potential brain differences can shed some light on why we sometimes experience those classic communication breakdowns between the sexes. It's not that anyone's wrong, it's just that we might be processing information in slightly different ways. Let's tackle the age-old debate, nature versus nurture. This slide dives into whether our body language quirks are baked into our DNA or if they're picked up from our surroundings, like learning the Macarena at a dodgy wedding. So nature here is all about what you're born with, your genetic lottery ticket. Nurture, on the other hand, is the stuff you soak up from your culture, your upbringing, the endless parade of social cues. It's the difference between your natural eye color and whether you instinctively nod in agreement when someone's talking, which, by the way, can vary wildly across the globe. Now, they throw in this fascinating question. When you do that classic arms crossed on the chest move, you know, the slightly unimpressed pose, which arm goes on top? Left over right or right over left? Apparently, there's some evidence floating around that this might actually be a genetic thing, something you're born doing and can't easily switch. It's like trying to suddenly write with your non-dominant hand. It would feel all wrong. And get this statistic. A whopping 7 out of 10 people tend to cross their left arm over their right. So, if you're a lefty crosser, you're in the majority. But what does all of this mean? Well, it suggests that at least some of our seemingly simple body language habits might be less about learning and more about the way we're wired from the get-go. So, the next time you cross your arms, you might just be showcasing a little genetic quirk. Who knew your resting, slightly unimpressed face could be so scientifically interesting? Okay, let's talk about faking it till you make it. Well, in the world of body language. This slide brings up the tricky question of whether we can truly put on a convincing act. And to illustrate, we've thrown in a rather famous example. Bill Clinton answering questions about Monica Lewinsky in front of the grand jury. Now, regardless of your personal opinions on the situation, it's a prime example of someone under intense scrutiny trying to control their nonverbal cues. But here's the kicker and the general consensus. It's really hard to pull off. Why? Because, as the slide points out, it's all about congruence. You see, when you're being genuine, your words, your big gestures, like waving your arms, and those teeny tiny micro signals your body throws out, which a slight eye twitch, a change in skin color, they all sing the same song. It's a harmonious choir of communication. But when you are trying to fake it, that choir starts to sound like a bunch of cats arguing. Your words might say one thing, but your body language will likely leak the truth. Those microsignals are especially sneaky. They often happen so fast, you can't consciously control them. So, while you might be able to manage a smile and a firm handshake, those subtle inconsistencies are what often give you away. In short, faking it, tough gig. Our bodies are surprisingly bad at keeping secrets. The iconic three-wise monkey gesture serves as a powerful visual metaphor for a common and often subconscious human response when confronted with something nasty, shocking, or a blatant lie. These masking reflexes, hands flying to cover eyes, ears, or mouth, are like our brain's instant, nope, not dealing with this button. Remember the aftermath of 9/11? The sheer number of people instinctively covering their faces was a heartbreaking example of this deep-seated need to physically block out overwhelming horror. But it's not always that dramatic. Even hearing bad news can trigger a hand flying to the mouth in disbelief. It's our inner monkey trying to cope. All right, buckle up, because we're about to delve into the sneaky world of fib-telling. Non-verbally, of course. This slide is all about 6 of the most common lying gestures. Think of it as your cheat sheet to spotting those little Pinocchio moments. Now remember, just seeing one of these doesn't automatically scream liar, liar, pants on fire. Context is key. But when you start seeing a cluster of these bad boys, your spidey sense might justifiably start tingling. We're talking about those unconscious tells that often betray our carefully constructed stories. So keep your eyes peeled and let's become master lie detectors, or at least a little more savvy about those awkward truths our bodies sometimes spill. Ever catch someone subtly covering their mouth while they're talking to you? Or even while you're talking to them? Ding ding! That could be a red flag. Subconsciously, if someone's spinning a yarn, their brain might tell their hand to try and physically stop those fibs from escaping. Similarly, if they're listening to you with a hand clamped over their mouth, they might be silently thinking, "I don't believe you," or holding back a juicy contradiction. This gesture might have roots in the childhood shh action, associating the hand with silencing. But hold your horses. Context is crucial. They could just be anxious, nervous, have a tickle in their throat, feel self-conscious, or even be simply thinking deeply. Intriguing research does suggest a potential physiological link between dishonesty and subtle nasal responses. The release of catecholamines, those are hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline, during deception can theoretically cause a slight swelling in the nasal tissues and an increase in blood pressure, leading to a subtle sensation of itching or tingling. The almost imperceptible nasal expansion during deception has been anecdotally termed the Pinocchio effect. The example of Bill Clinton reportedly touching his nose frequently during his grand jury testimony is a well-known, though anecdotal, illustration often cited. It's vital to remember that these physiological changes are typically very subtle and not consciously noticeable to a person exhibiting them. Furthermore, a simple itch, allergies, or even contemplation can also lead to nose touching. Don't go accusing everyone with an itchy nose of being a secret agent. When the brain grapples with deceit, doubt, or something unpleasant or difficult to process, it can trigger an unconscious desire to block out the visual input associated with that discomfort. This often manifests as the eye-rubbing gesture. Interestingly, observed differences in the manner of eye rubbing between men and women, more vigorous rubbing in men versus gentler touches in women, might be partly attributed to factors like the presence of makeup. Similar to the eye rub acting as a visual block, the ear grab can be a subconscious attempt to physically distance oneself from deceitful or unpleasant sounds. It can also indicate that someone has heard enough and wants to interrupt or disengage from the conversation. It can be linked to feelings of anxiety or uncertainty. The observation of King Charles frequently using both nose touching and ear grabbing in stressful social situations really lends support to the idea that these gestures can be stress-related coping mechanisms. The significant point about cultural variations in body language interpretation, such as the historical association of ear pulling with homosexuality in Italy, really underscores the critical importance of considering cultural context when interpreting these nonverbal cues. What might signify one thing in one culture could have a completely different meaning or even be offensive in another. This really highlights the potential for cross-cultural misunderstanding. The neck scratch, typically involving the index finger of the dominant hand gently scratching the side of the neck, usually just below the earlobe, is a frequently observed gesture that often signals doubt, uncertainty, disagreement, or internal conflict. The tendency for this gesture to be repeated approximately 5 times seems to be a common pattern. It can act as a nonverbal way of communicating, "I'm not entirely sure about this," or "I don't quite agree," or "I'm feeling a little conflicted about this." It's as if the person is physically expressing a mental itch of uncertainty. Desmond Morris suggested that lying can actually make your face and neck tingle. Think about it. Your body's under stress, maybe a little worried about getting caught, and that could lead to a slight increase in blood pressure, maybe even a little neck sweat or a feeling of being constricted. So that unconscious tug at the collar, it might actually be a genuine attempt to get some breathing room. It's like when your shirt suddenly feels 3 sizes too small when you're in the hot seat. Think about your own, I'm fibbing physical tells. Maybe it's a flushed face, fidgety hands, or suddenly breathing like you've run a marathon. Our bodies are surprisingly bad at keeping secrets. All right, let's talk about spotting those little white lies. But first, a word from the wise J.K. Jerome. Honesty's great, unless you're a really good liar. So while we're not encouraging deception, understanding how it manifests non-verbally is super useful. Thing is, most of us aren't great liars. Our bodies leak the truth, fidgety hands, weird pauses, those sneaky micro-expressions. So while aiming for honesty is easier, knowing the deceit signal is good intel. For research purposes, of course. The geography of the face. Okay, quick facial rundown. Think of your face as the ultimate emotion broadcasting system. Eyebrows, the weather forecast. Surprise, anger, confusion. Mouth, the gossip hub. Smiles, frowns, smirks. Eyes, the all-seeing storytellers. Interest, boredom, suspicious. Basically, reading faces is key to understanding the real story. In the land of friendly chats, our eyes tend to do a little dance, focusing on a triangle formed by the other person's eyes and the mouth for approximately 90% of the time. This social gaze is the sweet spot. It says, I'm engaged, I'm listening, and I'm not secretly plotting to steal your stapler. Too little eye contact, and you might come across as shifty or uninterested. Too much, and suddenly you're channeling your inner serial killer. It's all about finding that comfortable connection. Now, when things get a little interesting, our gaze does a little reroute. The intimate gaze is like a secret admirer code. It usually starts with 2 quick glances at the face, followed by a longer, lingering look, and this often travels south of the eyes, maybe down to the chin. Apparently, even when people are trying to play it cool and hide their attraction, hidden cameras have caught this pattern in action. It's like our eyes have a mind of their own when Cupid's arrow is hovering nearby. Turns out, men and women might see the world a little differently. Literally. Some research suggests women have a wider peripheral vision. This could explain why they might seem to be doing more subtle glances around, not necessarily ogling, just taking in the whole scene. Looking down can also have different meanings, depending on who's looking. For guys, it might be a sneaky way to check someone out, without being too obvious. For women, it could sometimes be a sign of submissiveness, or a way to avoid direct eye contact, while still being aware of someone's presence. These little visual differences can definitely lead to some awkward, were they looking at me? Moments. The power gaze is like the laser beam of eye contact. It's direct, intense, and unwavering. Use it right, and it can instantly make things serious, establish who's in charge, and stop unwanted behavior in its track. Think the teacher giving the look across the classroom. But be warned, wielding this gaze takes some serious skill. In friendly or romantic situations, it's usually a major turnoff, making you look aggressive or just plain creepy. It's all about context. Maybe okay-ish in a serious professional setting, like telling someone they're fired. but definitely avoid it on a first date unless your goal is to never have a second. A softer, more modulated gaze is usually your best bet for building bridges, not walls. Men often face challenges in accurately interpreting the frequently more indirect courtship cues displayed by women. This can lead to misinterpretations, where friendly behavior and smiling are mistakenly perceived as full-blown declarations of love. Spoiler, they're probably not. Why the confusion? Well, those pesky testosterone levels in men might make them see things through a more, shall we say, romantic lens. Plus, societal norms and different communication styles between genders don't exactly help. The key, guys, listen actively with your ears and your eyes. Look at the whole package of nonverbal cues, not just one fleeting smile. Consider the situation, and when in doubt, maybe just ask. Open and honest communication is your friend. Certain behaviors involving the lips are often employed as a subtle and sometimes conscious signals of attraction. Fuller lips are frequently associated with youth and, well, let's just say a certain allure. So, subtle pouting or slightly parting the lips can draw attention to this feature. And wet lips? Subconsciously, this can be seen as a bit of a sensual invitation. The fact that lipstick, especially in those classic red shades, has been a beauty staple for ages across cultures just goes to show the power of highlighting those kisses. But remember, beauty standards vary wildly. So what's considered flirty in one place might get you a raised eyebrow in another. Due to fundamental biological differences related to childbearing, women typically possess wider hips relative to their waist compared to men. Consciously accentuating this natural movement while walking, often referred to as a hip sway or rolling hips, can serve as an unconscious or deliberate signal drawing attention to these feminine contours. This gait can be perceived as a display of femininity and attractiveness. Cultural norms and individual preferences significantly influence the interpretation of this movement. What might be considered alluring in one cultural context can be viewed as simply a normal way of walking in another. Additionally, the degree of hip movement and the accompanying body language cues play a crucial role in how this signal is perceived. Let's talk about legs, not just for walking away from those awkward encounters, but also for those subtle come hither vibes. Now, leg twine, that's when someone's sitting and they kind of cross their legs, but it's more of a gentle wrapping or twisting than a rigid lock. Think less, I'm guarding Fort Knox, and more, my legs are feeling a bit flirty today. What's the deal with this leg tango? Well, it can be a way to subtly draw attention to the legs themselves, which, let's face it, are often considered an attractive feature. It's a bit like a nonverbal wink from the lower half, but, and this is a big but, context is king. Someone might just be comfy, have cold legs, or be trying to avoid showing off their holy socks. So, don't go full on Sherlock Holmes just because someone's legs are getting a little cozy. Look for other signs, like eye contact, smile, and whether they're also subtly preening or leaning in. If it's a whole body symphony of I'm interested, then the leg twine might just be the baseline, adding a little extra rhythm. Now let's talk about the gentleman's side of courtship. While ladies might be doing the hair flick, guys often go for the look at my shiny things approach. Think of it like a peacock showing off its feathers. But instead of feathers, it's often about demonstrating power, wealth, or status. While preening behaviors are common, male displays can also include exhibiting resources, displaying confidence, and engaging in behaviors that signal social dominance. So, what are some of the modern examples of men subtly or not so subtly flashing their resources and status when they're trying to impress? Think about it. All right, buckle up for a slightly awkward but scientifically relevant topic: the male crotch obsession. Yes, you heard me. In some of our primate cousins, the male of the species literally puts his assets on full display to show who's boss. Now, thankfully, human males are a little more refined. We're not exactly swinging from the chandeliers, but there's still an underlying biological tendency to signal dominance through our pelvic region. Think about the man spread on public transport. It's not always about needing more room. Sometimes it's a subconscious, I own the space declaration. Of course, society and thankfully the law have put some pretty firm boundaries on how far these displays can go. So, no, don't try to establish dominance by, well, you know, the male crotch obsession. Let's set the stage for decoding those silent workplace whispers. So we've been chatting about the fascinating world of body language in general, right? How a subtle eyebrow raise or a sneaky foot tap can speak volumes. Well, guess what? That silent storytelling goes into overdrive when you step into the office. Now let's shift gears to comfort and discomfort. Our bodies are pretty honest about how we're feeling, even when we're trying to put on a brave face. Protecting the vital organs like the chest and abdomen with arms crossed or hands clasped in front, or even holding a bag or object like a cell phone in front of the body, can indicate discomfort, anxiety, or feeling threatened. Crossing legs tightly, especially when combined with arm crossing, can signal defensiveness, closed offness, or resistance to what's being said. While normal blinking is essential, a sudden increase in blink rate can be a sign of stress, nervousness, or even an attempt to process more information under pressure. These are repetitive actions people use to calm themselves when stressed or anxious. Examples include touching or rubbing the neck, playing with hair, tapping fingers or feet. Maybe it's adjusting clothing repeatedly, or even shifting your posture frequently during a conversation. They indicate restlessness, boredom, or a desire to leave. A sudden shift to a more upright and alert posture might signal increased interest or agreement. Now let's talk about the good vibes, agreement and engagement. Subtly adopting the posture, gestures, or even speech patterns of the person you're interacting with often indicates rapport, agreement, and connection. It's usually an unconscious behavior based on your mirror neurons. Gently leaning towards someone during conversation typically signals interest, engagement, and attentiveness. Uncrossed arms and legs, relaxed shoulders, and an open torso generally indicate comfort, confidence, and receptiveness. When head nods are in sync with the speaker's word and tone, they genuinely signal agreement and understanding. Rapid, jerky nods might indicate impatience or just wanting the speaker to finish. And now for the not so good vibes: disagreement and disengagement. Physically distancing oneself by leaning back can signal disinterest, skepticism, or a desire to create space. Avoiding eye contact or frequently glancing away can indicate disinterest, discomfort, dishonesty, or a desire to end the conversation. Restless movements like tapping feet, playing with objects, or shifting in a chair can signal boredom, anxiety, or just impatience. This is where it gets juicy. If somebody's words say one thing, but their body language conveys the opposite, for example, saying, "I'm fine," with the crossed arms and a frown, guess what? They're probably not fine. When words and body language clash, always trust the body language. It's usually the more honest one. Now, for those who want to project confidence and authority, this one's for you. Pressing fingertips together in a steeple-like gesture can indicate confidence, authority, or even a subtle, "I'm smarter than you" vibe. Use with caution. Using open palms facing downwards, like you're pressing down on something, can convey authority and finality. It's like saying, "This is the deal, end of story." Standing or sitting with an expansive posture, example, your arms are slightly away from the body, legs uncrossed and slightly apart, that signals confidence and dominance. It's the opposite of shrinking into the corner. Confident individuals tend to move with purpose and grace, not like a jittery chihuahua. Their movements are controlled and deliberate, rather than jerky or fidgety. It's a quiet strength. All right, before you go out there and start diagnosing everyone, remember these golden rules for reading body language. Never, ever, ever interpret a single gesture in isolation. That's like judging a book by one word. Always consider the whole situation. The person's personality, are they naturally fidgety, their cultural background, and all the other verbal and nonverbal cues. Meaningful interpretations usually come from seeing a cluster of consistent body language signals that's all point to the same emotional state. If someone's crossing their arms, leaning back, avoiding eye contact, and tapping their foot, you've got a pretty clear message. Get to know someone's normal. What's their usual posture? How much eye contact do they usually make? What are their go-to gestures? Deviations from their baseline are far more significant than just a random gesture. I just really can't stress this enough. Body language is like a foreign language. What's polite in one culture might be rude in another. So do your homework if you're interacting across cultures. Many body language cues are super subtle and fleeting. Pay attention to those micro expressions, those brief flashes of emotion on the face, and the tiny shifts in posture. It's kind of like finding hidden Easter eggs. Body language gives you clues, not definitive proof. Use your observations to inform your understanding, but always be open to other interpretations. And if you're really unsure, use your words and ask for clarification. Let's talk about smiling, the universal sign of, "I'm not going to bite your head off," well, usually. Now, photographers, bless their hearts, are obsessed with getting you to say cheese. Why? Because apparently the magical word pulls back your zygomatic major muscles. Sounds like a rejected transformer. But here's the thing. While cheese might give you a technically correct mouth smile, it often results in a smile that looks about as sincere as a politician's promise. It's a fake smile. The eyes aren't in on the joke, and you end up looking like you're trying to convince somebody you're having a blast at the mandatory office party. So while cheese might be the go-to for snapshots, remember that a genuine heartfelt smile involves your whole face. The eyes crinkle, the cheeks lift. It's a full-face fiesta of happiness. And that, my friends, is the kind of smile that actually looks good in a photo and in real life. All right, folks, time to put on your detective hats, because we're diving headfirst into the fascinating and sometimes surprisingly tricky world of smiles. Now, as we've already established, body language is a sneaky little devil. It can totally back up what you're saying, like support a friend, or it can completely throw you under the bus, like that friend who spills your secrets at a party and then smiles. They're masters of disguise. A genuine smile is a warm hug for the face, but a fake smile, it's more like that awkward pat on the back you get from a distant acquaintance. So, our mission, should you choose to accept it, is to become smile sleuths. So here's the deal. We're going to check out some smiles in these videos. Your challenge is simple. Is it the real deal, or is it playing you for a fool? Once you've made your expert and totally correct, obviously, judgment, give us a thumbs up for genuine, the kind of smile that could melt glaciers, or a thumbs down for fake, the kind that could freeze them over. You can unleash your emoji powers using that fancy reaction feature. So get ready to analyze, folks, and let's see who's got the most discerning smile dar. Okay, let's have a look. Genuine or fake? I wonder what you guessed. Well, let's see. That was a genuine smile. You could see it in the eyes. Let's have a look at this chap. Genuine or fake? I think I know that one. If you guessed fake, you're correct. Let's have a look at this chap. Genuine or fake? I think that one's pretty obvious as well. If you guessed fake, you nailed it. Let's have a look at this lady. I think that one's pretty obvious as well. Definitely genuine. Her whole face is smiling. Let's have a look at this chap. Genuine or fake? A little more difficult, but if you guessed genuine, you'd be right. Let's have a look at this lady. Not much going on with the eyes, so I would think that one would be, yep, correct, fake. Genuine or fake? This one's a little more difficult, but I definitely saw some movement under the eye, so I'm going to say genuine. Yep, that was a genuine smile. Genuine or fake? I think that one's quite obvious. Definitely genuine. Let's have a look at this chap. Genuine or fake? I think we're starting to get the understanding of it's in the eyes. Didn't see anything there, so that one has to be fake. Genuine or fake? Wow. I don't think that one could be more obvious. That's definitely fake. All right, folks, we've reached the finish line of our body language deep dive. And if you've been paying attention, and I know you have, you're now armed with some serious nonverbal ninja skills. Because here's the bottom line. By becoming more attuned to those diverse body language cues, the eyebrow raises, the foot taps, the subtle lip quirk, and remembering that context is everything, seriously, a nose itch is just a nose itch, well, most of the time, you can significantly enhance your ability to understand and connect with others on a much deeper level. You'll be navigating social situations like a pro, decoding hidden meanings, and maybe even finally figuring out what your cat really wants. But remember, this is a continuous learning process. It's like learning to speak a new language. You get better with practice. So keep observing, keep refining your interpretation. And who knows, maybe one day you'll even become a certified human lie detector yourself. It's a real thing, I swear. Just don't tell your family I said that. They already think I'm weird enough.